Democrats refuse to meet with Trump regarding government shutdown. And lastly, Pentagon warns against China's Belt Road Initiative. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. It is the 26th day of our government shutdown, and the longest government shutdown in history. In an attempt to renegotiate, President Trump invited both Democrats and Republicans to lunch at the White House. Some took this as the president trying to usurp Democratic leadership by only inviting members of the House and not their leaders. However, Democrats remain united in their rejection. Republicans, on the other hand, accepted. And 2 out of the 9 Republicans attending voted in favor of the new House's spending bill that didn't include funding for the wall. Now, the Democrats don't believe a wall will be effective, nor do they think it's morally right. Hence why they declined it won't budge. Their biggest argument is that Trump is holding the government hostage while displacing American citizens who work for our government. Well, they have some more ammunition to use against Trump, being that his administration now estimates the cost of the government shutdown will double the original forecast. If the government shutdown lasts the rest of the month, NBC reports it will cost our GDP about 0.5 percentage point. And Mark Zandi, chief economist with Moody Analytics, believes the loss will come from 2 things in a quote from NBC News. Quote, of this, about half will be due to lost hours of government workers and the other half to hit the rest of the economy. Unquote. This may be concerning to some, and fair enough, I understand that. Although, I still have a few questions. First, how many lives have been taken by the law? How many lives have been lost due to our government shutdown? 0. None. Okay. Now, I can see somebody making the argument that these 800,000 people who are currently without pay have harder lives, which then can result in long-term health issues because of the stress they are acquiring during the shutdown. Fair enough, I can see that. I would have to agree to that point. However, this leads me to my second question, which is how many lives have been taken due to our inadequate immigration screening process and border security? The answer? Tens of thousands of lives have been taken. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Those workers can be compensated for lost pay, but you cannot compensate for a lost one. You just can't. So, therefore, in my opinion, it is safe to say Democrats are the ones to blame for our government shutdown. I mean, there were angel moms yesterday protesting outside of Nancy Pelosi's office, and she refused to meet with them. Now, what kind of elected official won't talk to American citizens about loved ones they've lost due to our government's inability to better protect its citizens? Oh, that's right. The kind of leader that's only concerned about power. That's also why Democrats ended up going to Puerto Rico with lobbyists to watch Hamilton, while the 800,000 workers they're championing for are without pay. They're still able to vacation, but the people they're fighting for can't. They don't want to negotiate. They'd rather go to Puerto Rico. That makes a lot of sense. So let's not forget, Democrats are for the little guys like you and I. And if what I just told you doesn't illustrate the Democrats are just grandstanding to hurt Trump, then I don't know what will. I truly don't. Especially when he is advocating for something their failed presidential candidate advocated for as well, which is a wall. But it's not surprising that people are only blaming Trump for the shutdown and think he's racist for advocating for a wall, when yesterday a study came out finding that 90% of his media coverage is negative, despite the fact that his main policy agenda is something a Democrat who was running for president twice and failed was in agreement with. Now, of course, there are going to be those who argue that, of course, Trump should get 90% negative coverage because of 90% of what he does is negative. This exact point was actually made by a New York Times writer, Frank Brunini, when he said the following during a CNN interview. Yeah, anti-Trump connotes driven by some sort of animus regardless of facts. I don't think we've been anti-Trump. I think we've been negative, and I think that's the only honest way to cover this president. Which means they won't talk about the Urban Revitalization Council he started that's intended to bring economic prosperity to poor communities, both in rural and inner city areas. It also means they won't give him credit for pulling troops out of Syria. It also means they won't give him credit for increasing our government's revenue while slashing regulations. It basically means they are anti-Trump, just lying about it, flat out. They just don't want to tell the truth. Because in reality, Obama should have received more negative coverage than Trump if these news organizations were truly objective. I mean, does no one remember or know about Fast and Furious? That was under the administration who claims they had no scandals. And if you don't know or don't remember what Fast and Furious is, well, the Obama administration was selling weapons to the Mexican cartel, which resulted in the death of federal agents. No one talks about that. No one talks about the fact that we are calling President Trump a dictator, but we just had a president who literally forced private citizens to buy something regardless of their economic status or if they needed it at all. He didn't care. He said, you can keep your doctor and you have to buy this insurance. That is a totalitarian move and a lie. The list goes on and on, but the point is that Democrats are in bed with the mainstream media, and anything that goes against their agenda will not be aired in a positive light, regardless of facts. And the facts have been on the side of President Trump the whole way through. Everybody who is objectively looking at the situation will realize this is a two-sided issue. It's not just Trump's fault. It's not just the Democrats' fault. It's that they can't come together on an agreement which should be nonpartisan. That agreement is building a wall. So, rather than blaming Trump for the issue, I would have to say Democrats hold more of the blame. I think they both hold some responsibility for it. Trump has had a long time to pass some legislation to get funding for the wall, and he hasn't done it. Now he's forced to put pressure on Democrats during this shutdown because they hold majority in the House. There's no way in hell he'll ever get another bill where they have gotten it thus far that includes the wall now. So I think there are two sides to blame. In my opinion, Democrats hold more of the responsibility, especially when you don't meet with people who are protesting outside of your office, who have had family members killed by illegal immigrants, and you're taking vacations to Hawaii, vacations to Puerto Rico, but claim to champion the little guys who are displaced from work, yet you refuse to meet with the president when he's trying to do some type of negotiation, a potential compromise to reopen the government. You won't even do that. So those are my reasons why I believe the Democrats are the ones to place or to put most of the blame on. Meanwhile, in other news, outside of the government shutdown, to something even more important, in my opinion, the Pentagon is warning that China is quietly working to undermine the United States and our allies' security in an attempt to become the new global leader. They are doing this by expanding their military, trading, and infrastructure. The Pentagon states the Belt Road Initiative and Made in China 2025 are two things aimed at hurting and ultimately beating America in industrial dominance around the globe. We've covered the Belt Road Initiative in prior episodes. This is the initiative in which Joe Biden's son was apparently involved in, although there's no concrete evidence to pin that on him. There's just a bunch of speculations. And other leaders in the Senate and House of Representatives have been accused of being in bed with China in some way. And the Belt Road Initiative is just trying to build infrastructures across the globe, which will then result in dependency upon the Chinese government. So that's what they're trying to do on a non-military front. As for military expansion, they have worked on acquiring nuclear bombers and space-based early warning systems, which may help some people who are still confused as to the importance of a space force and why Ted Cruz, Senator of Texas, has proposed a plan that resembles Ronald Reagan's Star Wars. This is also why I believe pulling troops from Syria was a good idea. With less troops overseas and unnecessary combats, we can allocate resources to other parts of our military to ensure China does not become the global superpower. Not only that, but we can become more effective at curtailing China's predatory loans and debt traps to third world countries in Africa and the like. Some of you may be wondering, what is the significance of China taking over Africa? And I would contribute that lack of knowledge to poor coverage in the media in general, because Africa is actually improving, and it's doing so really quickly. It's improving really quickly. And just imagine the importance of that continent with the size and scope it has when a majority of its countries are in the second or first world. That will be incredible. And China wants them to be economically dependent on them. So that kind of nation building doesn't appear to be Russia's goal. Russia is making power moves at countries that were once a part of the Soviet Union and have large Russian populations. I'm not trying to defend what Russia's doing. I think what they're doing is uncalled for. It's disgusting. They shouldn't be doing it whatsoever. We should be happy in the countries and the nation states we have developed. It's been very peaceful to live in the time we live in, because nations aren't warring for territory like they once were. So I definitely disagree with what Russia's doing, but China, on the other hand, is not only trying to regain lost territories like Vietnam and Taiwan, but they're also manufacturing islands, expanding its reach to assist third world countries, and spying on Western countries. Yet, we see little to no coverage of this in the mainstream media, and that's because it doesn't fit their narrative. Unfortunately, they are still trying to sell us that Trump colluded with Russia in the 2016 election, and now peddling the idea that Trump may be a Russian spy, although he has continued to place sanctions on Russia, which if he were a Russian spy, don't you think he would remove those sanctions? That only makes sense. Anyway, we have a lot of evidence to suggest China is actively trying to dethrone the West, but we have no evidence of Russia collusion or of Trump being a Russian spy. It just doesn't make any sense to me why the former is getting no coverage and the latter is getting all the coverage. Well, I guess it goes right back into the media just wanting to portray Trump in a negative light. And the fortunate thing about this whole situation is that at least our president, President Trump, sees what's going on and has been doing something about it. And just look at the trade war. that's a perfect example of him trying to combat what China is doing and kind of putting Russia over to the wayside. Although, like I said, he continues to place sanctions on them. He's putting more emphasis on China when it comes to our concerns. And yes, I know that some people were hurt by what he has done regarding the trade war in America, but by and large, most of the country was and is just fine. The same cannot be said for China. During that period, we have seen a growth in our manufacturing field as well. A field, this is a field that has been losing jobs to China for years now. And Trump has been able to regain some of those lost jobs, whether it be by economic policy, foreign policy. He is just able to see what China is doing, and he's actively combating it, which is a really good thing. And during that same period that we experienced a growth in our economy and our manufacturing sector, China's currency began to fall and their manufacturing sector was negatively affected. Trump has been working continuously to mitigate China's role as a superpower. That, in my opinion, is the best thing he is doing as a president when it comes to foreign relations. However, he has to keep the pressure on them because we can't afford to fall behind them in any way, especially when China is teaming with countries like Iran and making overt power moves to dethrone the West. It's no secret. They've been spying on us. I've covered it in so many episodes. And this report from the Pentagon just illustrates how important it is we shift our attention from the smokescreen Russia is and put it on China, because they are the real threat to the West. Not Russia, not any other country, as a matter of fact. Iran, yeah, but they can't even get a satellite into space. North Korea, we've started to slowly dismantle that oppressive regime. They have stopped nuclear testing. People thought that we were going to be in a third world war because of the president. That hasn't come to fruition. What should be the concern and where the media should be putting their attention is on China. Everything else, in my opinion, when it comes to foreign relations, is of less importance. Not saying we shouldn't cover other things going on around the globe, but if we're going to cover any nation in a way that we should be mindful of their intentions, it should be China. Hands down. And Trump, at least he is doing something to combat their overt attempts at dethroning America. And that's all I have for the news today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday. And we will see you again tomorrow. All right. Peace.